Well, look, I think every school system has to grapple with its history. Certainly here in Virginia, we do. You know, we've been attacked for changing the names of schools that carried the names of Confederate military figures here. But it was the right thing to do. Can you imagine, what it would be like to be a person of color walking into a school every single day, knowing that it's named after somebody who didn't think that your people had a right to exist freely?
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of history we're grappling with, in varying ways all over the country. Some of it's decades old, centuries old, some of it's contemporaneous. And the only way to grapple with it is to actually turn the page on it.
Yeah.
Address it and turn the page. And you can only start writing a new chapter if it's a new chapter, right?
Yeah.
It can't be the same thing that it was before.
Yeah. Well, and one more, you probably heard of this. Middle school students in Pennsylvania are protesting the dismissal of a teacher who reportedly provided them with a hotline for LGBTQ students as a resource to draw upon. They protested outside the building on Tuesday, calling on the school to reinstate social studies teacher Andrew Burgess. He is an 8th grade teacher who reportedly gave a transgender student who was being bullied resources for support outside the district and was fired for it. I mean, am I crazy? This seems so patently illegal. Yeah. And they're saying he's one of those teachers that they were saying that everybody went to for help. He was,
right.
One of those favorite teacher types. Go ahead.
Well, here in Fairfax, we let families and students know of all the great resources that are out there in the community. So I don't know what the story is there in Pennsylvania, but it's certainly not what I would be doing. Let them know what resources you have in the schools. Let them know what resources you have outside the schools.
Yeah. Karl, let's put on your campaign strategist hat. I mean, I am a woman and I have a uterus, unused as it is, not even lightly used, Trevor. But I just think they really have I know we say this all the time, wakened a sleeping giant, but I mean, I can feel their terror, can't you? That they know this issue is wildly unpopular.
For the first time ever.
Yeah.
For the first time ever, they don't want to talk about it, which is just absolutely telling. If you can get the Republican leadership to refuse to address the issue, you know that they're terrified about what the impact will be in November.
Yeah. Well, and also, do we give me 16? Tell me if this sounds. Mark Meadows essentially blasted Joe Biden's plan to fight inflation, which his plan to lower costs for Americans. Is that what I think he kind of said the quiet part out loud?
Yeah.
Here he is. Yeah.
This was Joe Biden's plan today for inflation. Blame Senator Rick Scott, talk about ultra MAGA, and then ultimately what he said is, here's his plan. He's going to make Chinese goods cheaper so that it will help the American people buy something at less, at less of a cost. I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
Wow.
And yet they have to have an enemy.
No, you can't make that stuff up, Karl. Did he just say? Joe Biden, how dare he? He's
trying to make things cheaper.
Right. He is. He's talking about Biden lifting the Trump-era tariffs on China to lower costs for Americans. And so I'm thinking, what you're saying, that's a bad thing to lower?
Well,
okay.
Look, these people are also in the pocket of big oil. And what did we learn this week? Record gas prices this week, and the first quarter reports for earnings for oil and gas companies came out this week.
Yeah.
And they made $41 billion in the first 3 months of the year, the top 20 oil and gas companies.
Yeah.
That's, for many of them, that's double what they made last year.
Yeah.
And they're doing it because the prices are so high and because they're taking advantage of the crisis in Ukraine. And so you want to talk about price gouging. It's happening everywhere you look.
Yeah.
In the consumer price index.
Right. And as we keep saying over and over, inflation is worldwide. Here are some fun facts for us to run with, Karl. We are living through a historic economic recovery. Last week, we've added 8.3 million jobs, right, since January 2021. The most jobs added in any president's 15 months. That's in history. 95% of the jobs that were lost at the start of the pandemic are back. And again, Karl, as a strategist, talk to us about, is it hard to get people to remember what was not very long ago, a year ago, more than 3,000 Americans a day were dying when Joe Biden took office. There was no plan to distribute or administer the vaccine. Schools were almost fully virtual, as you know. We lost millions and millions of jobs. And obviously, the fact that the economy is booming, no accident. Biden laid the foundation for an unprecedented recovery, the American Rescue Plan, the vaccination program. Right now, we have the most jobs ever created in a single year, an unprecedented drop in unemployment. We're, 3.5%, right? Layoffs remain near historic lows. Job openings are at a record high of 11.5 million in March. The U.S. was the first country in the G7 to recover all the GDP lost during the pandemic. Most other countries' economies have not recovered as quickly as ours. Again, it's because of the plans that Biden put in place. Talk to us about how we talk about that and message that as we go into the midterms.
Well, a couple things. I think people need to recognize what the cross current is, right? The cross current is we have tremendous economic stability and fragile political stability. And Republicans benefit from fostering an atmosphere of fragile political instability because it keeps people afraid and it keeps people thinking that nothing's happening in Washington, even though a great deal has happened in Washington. They just feel like, a lot of people just feel like it's business as usual. It's only business as usual because Republicans are standing in the way of anything more getting done. They refuse to work with Democrats on, very basic things and things that are broadly popular. You mentioned choice at the top. Look, they're standing in the way of protecting a woman's right to choose in statute. So they may not be talking about this issue right now, but their votes are telling a different story. And so if you want to communicate about the economy, tell people exactly where we are and exactly where we've come from and what we risk, right? Because what they're going to do if they take control again is they're going to make billionaires pay even less than they already do in taxes. They're going to do the same thing for corporate America, which has been profiteering off of the backs of consumers during this inflation.
Yeah.
And their solution to inflation is not to look at corporations which are making record profits.
Yeah.
Record profits.
Yeah.
Far
and they're on
more.
tape bragging about it, that they're able
Right.
to blame inflation.
Well, the head of Halliburton said on an earnings call the other day that it was in their best interest as oil and gas companies to only do short cycle projects because it kept people worried about the supply of gasoline,
Right.
which kept prices high and profits rolling. What does that tell you about the priorities of these companies? And then they spend tens of billions of dollars not on stabilizing gas prices for consumers, but on showering executives with even more money in dividends and stock buybacks.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, before you go, I keep saying too, I just think there is a point to be made about that. These are crazy people. These people they keep trying to say the left is extreme. And, we joke about seeing, wine and cheese served at protests and overly polite, neighbors with chalk. I mean, it is.
Right.
Meanwhile, let me just pick this one. Candace Owens says Bill Gates is behind the baby formula shortage. I mean, they keep picking the same boogeymen and have the same crazy conspiracy theories. And I just think most Americans are not crazy.
You got to think that when the formula shortage is solved, they're going to claim that there are microchips in the baby formula.
Yes.
And now that I've said that out loud, it's probably going to become a thing on the internet. It's almost, these facts that you're reading.
Right. Sorry.
It's almost like you're trying to impress upon us that Candace Owens is lying.
Right. And that it might be crazy in some way, and it's not.
And I, for one, won't stand for it. That is not her history.
Don't you chalk me. I will call the police so fast, mister.
I'm not very good at gaslighting. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Karl. You're a delight. See you next week.